If you're wanting to lose weight, or if you've been trying to lean down and shed that excess body fat and get into really good shape, but you've been struggling with the whole thing, I can promise that by the end of this video, you're going to know the 3 tactical steps that you need to take to get yourself into the best shape that you've ever been in. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Joe Murphy. I co-founded League Fit Academy 9 years ago with the sole focus of educating young rugby league players about how to build their body, their skills and their mind. We now work with hundreds of players across 6 different continents right around the globe. Now, like I mentioned, there's 3 things or 3 steps that, if taken, work 100% of the time for 100% of the people that are looking to lose body fat. And the first and the most important step is that you must be in a calorie deficit. Now, a calorie deficit is any shortage in the number of calories consumed relative to the number of calories needed for maintenance of your current body weight. What that means in real terms is if you have less energy going in than you do going out, you're in a calorie deficit. Think of it like this. Imagine that your body's like a bank account. If you spend more money each week than you put in, your account balance goes down. In the same way, if you use more energy than the energy you get from your food, your body will spend extra stored energy, fat, and you'll be in a calorie deficit. Or another example is to think of your body like a water tank. Okay? The water represents the energy you get from food. If you pour less water into the tank than you take out, the water level goes down. In a similar way, if you eat less energy, food, than your body uses, the energy level in your body goes down, which means you're in a calorie deficit. So hopefully now you understand what a calorie deficit is. The next and much more challenging part is actually getting your body into that calorie deficit. And there's 3 ways to do it. A, you can eat less, which is pretty simple really. B, you can move more. Again, pretty simple. And C, which is what we recommend to most people, is really just a combination of A and B. Move a little bit more and eat a little bit less. So now we know if you want to lose some body fat, A, you must be in a calorie deficit, which means you need to be consuming less energy than you're spending. And typically the easiest way to do this is a combination of an increased activity level and a decreased amount of calories. And it really is that simple. But simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. Some people will try and make it more complicated than it needs to be, and they'll talk about evil foods you need to avoid, or how they have the secret diet that works and none of the others have the same magical powers as theirs. You know, they'll rattle off names like the Mediterranean diet or the keto diet or the paleo diet, the vegan diet, intermittent fasting, the DASH diet, the carnivore diet, and there's plenty more. They'll talk about not eating after 5 p.m. or that you need to be fasting or that it's all about insulin. The fact is there's plenty of different diets that work, but when it comes to burning off body fat, the only reason that any of them work is because they help to get the person into a calorie deficit. And it's really that simple. Now, oftentimes people might be a massive advocate for a particular way of eating because it's worked for them. And you know, that's great, no dramas. Generally speaking, the best fat loss diet is the one that puts you in a calorie deficit and is sustainable. Anyone on the planet could get shredded eating boiled chicken breasts and steamed broccoli.
All right guys, so meal number 2, I've got 6 ounces of chicken and 125 grams of rice. So it's time for meal 3. 6 ounces of chicken, 125 grams of white rice.
But for most people, they're not going to be able to do that for more than 1 or 2 meals before they throw in the towel. It's not sustainable. So if it puts you in a deficit and works with you and your lifestyle, then that's an effective diet. But remember we said there's 3 steps, yeah? Or 3 things that you need to do. Step 1, obviously, is you need to be in a calorie deficit. Now, step 2. Step 2 is you need to perform resistance training at least 2 to 3 times per week. When I mention this, I often get the response, but Joe, I want to get lean. I'm not trying to look like the Hulk. Why do I need to lift weights? Well, if you remember me saying right at the start that yes, we want to lose weight, but more importantly, we want to lean down. And that doesn't just mean weight, but rather lose body fat. And here's the kicker. Anyone can just wire their mouth shut and do cardio all day to lose weight. And you know what? It'll work. You'll lose weight. And you'll probably look and feel and perform terribly because up to half of the weight that you're going to lose is going to be lean tissue. So muscle mass, strength, power, bone density, say goodbye, weakness and injury, here we go. A better approach is to think that you're trying to lose fat rather than simply lose weight. Yes, there's definitely some people who need to see the scales go down simply because they're too heavy. But the focus needs to be on burning off adipose tissue or fat and hanging onto as much lean tissue as possible. And the number one way to ensure that you maintain as much of your lean tissue as you can is by performing resistance training a minimum of 2 to 3 times per week. Lifting weights sends the body the signal that it needs the muscle mass to lift the heavy things, and that lifting the heavy things must be super important to staying alive, otherwise you wouldn't lift the heavy things. So if we need the muscle to lift the heavy things, then we can't burn the muscle off when we're in a calorie deficit, otherwise we can't lift the heavy things and we might die. So we'll get more fuel from stored body fat rather than from lean tissue. Whereas if you didn't lift the heavy things, the body will think to itself, okay, well, we're in a calorie deficit, so there's not many calories around. Could be a drought or a famine. Regardless of the reason, we don't have enough calories, so we'll start to use our own body for fuel. Now those muscles, they're expensive to keep alive, and he doesn't use them much, so let's use them as fuel and let's hang on to the body fat for as long as we can in case this famine continues on for a long time. That's how the body naturally works. That's the process at play here. But I'll give you another example to make it even simpler. Let's say we've got a set of twins. Let's call them Tom and Tim. Okay? They both weigh 100 kilos and they want to get down to 90 kilos. So they both create the same calorie deficit, but Tom lifts weights 3 days per week and Tim doesn't. 6 months later, Tom and Tim step on the scales and they're both at 90 kilos. Fantastic, mission accomplished. Or is it? Tom and Tim both had their body fat, skin folds taken, and they get a DEXA scan at the start and at the end of the process. And there's a massive difference between the two. Tim, who wasn't lifting weights, he's lost 10 kilos, 5 kilos of which was lean tissue. Tim is now lighter, sure, which is good, but he's also weaker, he's not particularly leaner, and he's got weaker bones and he's now more prone to injury. Tom, on the other hand, like we said, Tom was lifting the whole time. Now, Tom also lost 10 kilos, but he only lost half a kilo of lean tissue. So Tom's just as light, but way leaner, and he's actually gotten stronger, which, yes, is not only possible, but virtually guaranteed for someone who wasn't lifting weights beforehand. So the lesson is whenever you're trying to lose body fat and lean down, you must be lifting weights a minimum of 2 to 3 times per week to preserve lean tissue. So, step 1, you want to create a calorie deficit. Step 2, you need to lift weights. And the third and the final step is to eat a sufficient amount of protein. Why? For exactly the same reason as you perform resistance training while in a calorie deficit, because it preserves muscle or creates a muscle sparing effect whereby your body will preferentially burn body fat as fuel instead of lean tissue. You know how we were just talking about Tom and Tim? Well, if Tim, the one who didn't lift weights, simply ate a sufficient amount of protein, he may have gone from losing 5 kilos of lean tissue to only losing 2 or 3. And Tom, the one who was lifting weights, well, if his protein was on point, he may not have lost any lean tissue at all. And if this was his first time lifting weights properly, he may have even gained a few kilos of lean tissue during that time. Yes, it does happen. People can gain muscle while in a calorie deficit, but look, outside of illegal chemical enhancements, it typically only occurs in people new to training, and even more so in those with a fair bit of body fat to lose. Now, there's a whole other range of benefits to eating an increased amount of protein. It increases satiation levels, which means you feel satisfied easier and you stay full for longer, which is very handy when you're eating in a calorie deficit, right? Because oftentimes the hardest part is dealing with the hunger. And it also slightly increases your caloric expenditure or your metabolism via something called the thermic effect of food. Now, the thermic effect of food, or TEF, is also known as diet-induced thermogenesis. It's the increase in metabolic rate after eating. So basically, the energy your body uses to digest, absorb, and process the nutrients from the food you consume. The different macronutrient or macros have a different thermic effect. Protein has the highest thermic effect, with about 20 to 30% of the energy in the food being used in digestion and metabolism. Carbohydrates sit at around 5 to 10%, and fats have the lowest thermic effect of like 1 to 3%. So eating a higher amount of protein will slightly increase the amount of calories that you burn each day. Now, to finish off point 3, notice I've said several times that you need to be consuming a sufficient amount of protein. Well, the amount of protein that we use with everyone working with us is 2 grams per kilo of body weight. As an example, if you're weighing in at 90 kilos, you should be shooting for a minimum of 180 grams of protein. Remember, that's actual protein, not protein-containing food. A 200-gram piece of chicken breast isn't 200 grams of protein, it's about 60 grams of protein. So to summarize step number 3, eat a sufficient amount of protein, which is a minimum of 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, because it will be easier for you to maintain or possibly even gain lean tissue while in a calorie deficit. It'll also make it easier for you to maintain your calorie deficit because protein makes you feel fuller for longer, so you're less likely to overeat. And finally, you get a nice little increase in your metabolic rate by consuming more protein. So I'm going to make it crystal clear one more time. If you're wanting a foolproof way to lean down, shed that excess body fat and get into really good shape, the 3 steps that you need to take are: you need to get into a calorie deficit, you need to perform resistance training or weights 2 to 3 days per week, and you need to eat a sufficient amount of protein, which is at least 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. If you do those 3 things, if you do them consistently for a long enough period of time, you'll be well on the way to that much leaner physique that you're after. Trust me, because I'm Joe, and Joe knows.